Hey everybody, welcome to the F-Bard's Chronicles. This is the second part of my Lost Mine of Phandelver campaign that I run for two different groups, the Warhamsters and the Red Wedge Pact. Both groups tackled parts of Cragmaw Hideout or Phandalin in their second sessions, but it went about differently. So for this part, I have to separate the stories of the two groups and I can't keep switching between them. So we have a long video. First, we will talk about the Red Wedge Pact. Donbo, the Goliath fighter, Vondal, the dwarven cleric, Luth, the human wizard, and Rosanna, the human bard. If you remember from their first session, they had fought the goblin ambush and followed their trail to the Cragmaw hideout. Through some clever use of thaumaturgy, they had managed to scare off the goblin lookouts and the wolves in the first cave. Here's the thing. The adventure has two healing potions in Clark's treasure hoard. However, having the potion in the end doesn't really help players. And don't forget, they might find this as their first dungeon in the campaign, and they have no magic items. As first level players, the clerics or the bard or the druid, they only have two spell slots, so they're really low on healing. So to mitigate this problem, what I did, I put one of the healing potions in the debris in the wolf's room. My reasoning was that Clark is a mindless bugbear, is just brutal, doesn't understand magic items, and he just tossed it aside. As the Red Wedge Pact sneaked into the cave, they failed their perception checks and their stealth checks. That means that the goblin on the wooden bridge notices them and they didn't notice him. Also remember, there is only one party member who can see in the dark, so this cave is extra hard for them. The goblin on the bridge runs over to the next room and opens the first dam. I describe it as the party hears the sounds of wet wood screeching against wet wood, and a gush of water comes tumbling down the tunnel. Some of them succeeded their saving throws and some of them failed. The wizard, of course, is floated all the way back outside the cave and has to scramble back in. They try to keep sneaking in and end up in this corridor. Once again, they fail their stealth checks. At this point, they hear Yumik, the goblin from inside the cave, yell out, "Come any closer and he dies!" The players have no idea who he is, but they assume it's Gundren, because that's the one they're looking for. Luth tries to slowly approach and starts talking to Yumik. I think his plan was to turn this into a hostage negotiation situation. For this, I had thought that, okay, Yumik needs more than one successful charisma check to be turned. So I decided, kind of on the spot, that, okay, his stance is hostile and attack. If Luth succeeds with his persuasion, his stance will move from aggressive to just hostile. This way, if Luth keeps succeeding, it can go through neutral to friendly and all the way to an ally. This is when something peculiar happened, and players, this is a lesson why you should never metagame. Luth rolled 4, 5, and 8 for his persuasion checks. The players assume this is going nowhere and they start a fight. What they didn't know is that I was giving wisdom saves to Yimik against Luth's persuasion, and he had rolled a 2, 0, and 5. So, unbeknownst to the players, the persuasion was working. And if they had kept going, they would have made friends with the goblins here, which tends to pay off massively further down the road. Stay tuned. The fight was tough. One of the players went unconscious, the cleric brought him back, and there was like a lot of fighting. Donbo, the Goliath fighter, couldn't throw his javelin very well because he doesn't have dark vision. There was a lot of problems of him even getting into position to attack the creatures because the goblins had used barricades and things like that to get cover. Cover in 5th edition is very important. Make sure your bad guys use it. Tying back to the earlier advice though, if the players had not investigated the debris in the wolf room, I would have put the healing potion on Yimik. The point is not to put the potion in places where I'm suggesting. What I want you to take away is that I had kept the healing potion as a mobile treasure. I knew that I wanted them to have it before they fought Clark. This way I was free to put it wherever made sense before they fought Clark. By the end of it, the players were low on resources, but they realized that they had made a lot of noise. And now they have Sildar Hallwinter on their side. Sildar Hallwinter, remember, is the human fighter companion who was traveling with Gundren. So they kept pushing, and they had a deadly battle against Clark. I think two of them went down at some point. Then one was able to be stabilized. One was fed the healing potion, and they came back and they won. Barely, but they did. I will say though that there was a lot of talk about taking a long rest after the first fight. If you are a new dungeon master, you will find yourself in situations like this where the players will want to rest after every fight in the dungeon. Players are inherently risk averse. This often leads to a frustrating scenario for the DM where you want to keep the tension up, but the players are going to completely diffuse it. Here are some options that you can use. It's specific to this situation, but I think you can tell how you can think in situations like this. What I would have done in this case is that if the players took a long rest, I would have made sure that Clark escapes while they're resting. He would have gone on to Cragmaw Castle, and that encounter would have been harder. So not dealing with the problem now makes the next problem harder. So there's a law of unintended consequences here. This would have given the players a sense that their choices matter. The other option would have been to let the players have a short rest. Remember, we don't want to overwhelm them when they're not capable of dealing with this, but keep the tension up. So you let the players have a short rest, and then have Clark and his minions attack them as they rest. So after defeating Clark, the players talked to Sildar for a while. They found out about connections to the Black Spider, and these are called the Cragmaw tribe goblins, and they have a stronghold somewhere, but he's not very sure where it is. The players make their way back towards the road where the dead horses were and where they had left their cart. Here's the thing. The players had said nothing about what they were going to do with the cart that they were escorting. They just went off into the wilderness looking for the goblin cave. Therefore, when they came back to the spot, I told them that the cart was gone. The implication was that somebody had found it on the roadside and stolen it. And that's where the session ended for the Red Wedge Pact. That was their second session. Now, on to the story of Warhamsters. If you remember, previously the Warhamsters had split up. Turquoise, the Dragonborn Paladin, and Keth, the half-orc rogue, had followed the Goblin Trail and went to the mouth of the Cragmaw hideout. The other half of the party, Ellie, the Gnome Wizard, and Krem, the Tiefling Cleric, had taken the Rockseeker's cart to Phandelver. Krem and Ellie took the cart to Barthen, got paid for their service. They had a lot of fun role-playing with Barthen, and eventually went to the Stonehill Inn. This is where the job gets a little hard for the new DM. There are a lot of rumors to be heard in the inn, but it's unrealistic for people to just come up to their table and say these things to the PCs, or just give them quests like a video game. Don't do that. What I would recommend is write down short dialogues, no more than 2 back and forth each, for some of other patrons. Pick a rumor, put it into a conversation between 2 other patrons in the inn, and make sure that your players overhear it. This way, they have a chance to think about it, and they may or may not choose to engage with it. Usually, what I see that the players hear all these rumors, they talk amongst themselves about which ones they're interested in, and then they follow that. While Krem and Ellie are enjoying chicken pot pies in the inn, Turquoise and Keth show up at Barthen's. Remember, they don't know where Krem and Ellie are going to go. They don't know anything about Phandelver. I have no idea why, at some point during the discussion, Turquoise, played by my friend Remy, asks, "Do you have a very small creature and a very large creature?" Of course, she was referring to the small gnome that Ellie, played by my fiancée, Hannah, and the large tiefling, Krem, played by my friend Ricky. These are all new players, by the way, except Ricky's husband Dylan, who plays Keth, the half-orc, and I'm constantly blown away by how amazing role players they are. For Hannah and Remy, this is their first campaign. For small creature and big creature, I decided that this was a time for some levity. So I decided that Barthen interprets this request literally. He brings out a tiny hamster in a cage and a huge ox from the back of the store. As I expected, Turquoise didn't really want an ox, but was super into having a tiny hamster pet. I had a lot of fun role-playing the hamster, who is now named Warhamster. Hence the name, the Warhamsters. Yeah, Having acquired their first pet, the Warhamsters roamed around town, and they met Sister Gorail. They had a conversation about Timora and Luck and the orcs on Wyvern Tor, etc. I played Garail as a more sneaky person, like she has a secret. There's nothing in the adventure that really explains how the players find out that she is a potential quest giver without completely breaking the fourth wall and Sister Garail coming up to them and saying, "Hi, I have a quest for you." That doesn't make any sense. So I played her up a little bit more like a sneaky person. This made the rogue player start talking to her in Thieves' Cant. The adventure doesn't say anything about her speaking Thieves' Cant, but I decided on the spot that she's a member of a secret society, the Harpers, so they would definitely know Thieves' Cant. This gives her a reason to think that these mercenaries are insightful and might be useful to deal with, and it gives the rogue player a chance to show off his language skills. It's important to make sure that your players get to use their skills and tool proficiencies and languages. Don't just let every NPC they meet in the campaign speak common. It's no fun then. Then what was the point of writing down all those language proficiencies? After their negotiation with Sister Garail, the Warhamsters decided that yes, they would like to help her out and go to Conyberry and figure out what the Banshee did with the spellbook of Bowgentle. However, they decided that they would first try to go and rescue Gundren from the Cragmaw hideout because he's their patron and they like him. This is where the session ended. We'll pick up the stories of the Red Wedge Pact and the Warhamsters next time. Thank you all for watching, and that's all, folks.